everyone. Welcome to our second webinar in the APAC Optimize webinar series. Our topic today is process mining, leveraging data to visualize and optimize operations. I'm Jenny Rainicala. I'm the APAC Optimize lead for Capco, and I'm joined today by our process mining experts from Capco as well as Celonis, which is a leading technology provider in this space. In case you're unfamiliar with Capco, we're a financial services specialist consultancy. We help our clients all the way from defining strategy to delivering complex, large-scale transformation programs globally. Our key competencies are consulting, digital, data, and technology. To introduce myself, I've been with Capco for 12 years across our London, Hong Kong, and Singapore offices. Prior to that, I was at Accenture in financial services. So all my entire career has focused on process improvement, target operating model design, and global or regional transformation initiatives in financial services. With us today, we have Rohan Prabhu from Celonis. Rohan has over 25 years of experience in roles across P&L management, business transformation, sales and operations, and he's the VP of Managed Service Providers, focused on partner and customer success. We have Edwin Hui, who leads our APAC Capco data practice. He's got over 25 years of experience in data and is focused on advising companies on how to realize the value of data using the right strategy and technology. We have Christine Janku. She's our US process mining practice lead at Capco, and she successfully delivered innovative process mining solutions for our clients, and will share her insights on these engagements today. We also have Mix Demontovic, our APAC process mining lead with a background in data and transformation, and he'll demo process mining for you today. Now, let me introduce to you the webinar series and our agenda for today. So this is part of a 4-part series. Last time we spoke about how to get started with your optimization efforts, and we had Phil Wright, the HSBC Vietnam COO, share his experiences and lessons learned. You can find that video recording on the microsite that we've listed on the side, so capco.com/intelligence/optimize, and you can also find other resources there, such as blogs and white papers. Now, as we move along the optimization maturity curve that's depicted at the bottom of the slide below, today we focus on leveraging process mining technology to help with the data-driven, essentially a faster current state assessment, which will also help prioritize the areas for streamlining, amongst other things that you'll hear about as part of this webinar. So in terms of the agenda today, first, Edwin will share with you how to leverage process mining to create a data-driven baseline for your processes. And then Rohan will share a little bit around the benefits of process mining. Mix is going to do the demo for you today, and that's focusing on KYC as one of the use cases, and you'll find out about many more use cases as well. And then Christine and Rohan will join me for a Q&A. We'll finish up with Christine sharing our approach to process mining. So now I'll pass on to Edwin to talk about how process mining enables a data-driven baseline.
So thank you very much, Jenny, and welcome again, everyone. So especially those who basically have come last time. So just like what Jenny said, so we actually also have a white paper, particularly on process mining on the microsite that Jenny just mentioned. So if you want to have a quick read, you are also encouraged to download that paper. So we get to the second stage of our journey today. So you might be wonder why we put a technology as the focus of our second stage. And this is what we are going to show you today. So I hope that at the end, towards the end of today's section, you have a insight as well as share our belief that process mining is an integral part, of this whole journey, especially when you're starting this up. So without this, it would be quite hard for you to do a continuous baselining as well as monitoring of your process performance. So to us, this is really the start of the whole journey when you move from ad hoc changes as well as into this more enterprise perspective of doing the process optimization from a holistic manner. So with that, let me do a quick intro. of what process mining is. So if we can move to that page. Okay, so that's I think just imagine, I mean, in your operations in your company that you have thousands of operations and processes. So some will be quite simple, like the one on the left-hand side. So, and some would be more complicated, just like you have decision nooks, you have branches. But no matter if it's simple or complicated, you deploy those into your business process management platform or your ERP. So after you deploy it for years, I mean, then there would be variation, just like the one that we've shown in the second part. So there could be different reasons of this. That might be people are not trained enough, I mean, on doing the right thing. Might be they want to do, I mean, some speed up process to fast track that particular activities. Might be there's just some information missing as shown in the diagram. So what we do when we actually want to investigate a process in the past, just like what I've done 10 years ago, is that first of all, I'll look at the process model design. I mean, the original process model design. Then I'll look into the system. So the trivial KPI and metrics that I'll look at is the elapsed time, obviously. So I mean, the difference between the start time and end time of a process and how it compares with the target. So, but then I'll also go and talk to some of the activities owners, so they might give their the reasoning of why we are doing some processes that is not in the original design. So there would be some investigation that needs to be done, and then I put together the results and then find out, okay, there might be a need to do the redesign. So you can imagine, I mean, on how we do it historically, it takes first of all, a SME times, and then it needs to be some investigation that is done. So it is quite hard if we do it this way in a very continuous manner. So to basically, first of all, to investigate, and secondly, to find out what's the reasons behind. But without this information, then it's quite hard for you to come up with, okay, which are the processes that I should improve, which are the processes that I can ignore for now, because you might not have the full information that you would like to have. So this is where process mining comes in. So process mining as a technology is that it will look at the logs that is usually generated by the processes when it's executed in the systems. So even if that particular process might span multiple systems, then it would help to stitch all these logs together. So as a result, and this is what we'll show you today in the demo, is that it will give you a very nice visual. So first of all, obviously it will give you high-level metrics just like the elapsed time, but you can, just like a normal visualization of BI report, you can drill into the details and look at, okay, what is this node actually happening, and what's the performance of this particular activities, as well as all the all the variations in that process shown to you in a single diagram. So what it means is that there are two trivial benefits. The first benefit is that you would have a very easy and straightforward type way to find your initial, to baseline all your processes in your operation. So then with that initial baselining, it would be much easier for you to find that initial list of candidates for you to improve. So because just like we talked in the first part of our webinar, we talked about you should have a continuous process to find what are the candidates to be improved. I mean, so should I improve this first, or should I improve that next? So this initial baselining is the first benefits when you apply process mining, I mean, in the background. The second obvious benefits is that because you can do it, you can just look at the logs from an non-intrusive manner, then what it means is that you can continuously get the information and the performance of it, I mean, over time. So essentially, it will give you a very nice looking dashboard showing you all the metrics that you need. So especially when you've done some improvement, I mean, you might automate a particular activity, you might just do a redesign, but you can see the before and after in that dashboard, I mean, immediately, I mean, on a day-to-day basis. So besides these two trivial benefits, one more subtle benefit is that because you can look at the information, you can look at the details, you can look at the variations straight away. So if you do the redesign, if you do the automation, so you can, I mean, just keep on monitoring it, especially in the initial stage. So if there's some deviation or variation occurs right after you redesign, then you can talk to the people straight away. So instead of just wait, to make the whole process goes worse, then you can basically alert yourself to get on those variation right at the start. So, and then you can talk to the people, no, this is not the intention of my original design. You shouldn't be doing this. So this subtle, benefits of finding some misalignment earlier would be something that it's not so easy that you will have in the past. So with this, I think that's why we believe that this is an integral part, especially when you embark on the journey of an enterprise level process improvement program. So, and with that, let me pass to Mix so that he can talk about how we see this technology is adopting around the world. So pass to you, Mix.
Thanks, Evan, for that. So yeah, just before we dive into the benefits of process mining deeper, I want to set the scene and talk a little bit about the global adoption trends across the globe for process mining. Process mining as a technology has really been around since early 2010s. Industries across Europe and North America were the first adopters for process mining. So as a consequence of that, financial services providers, banking and insurance are really the market leaders in terms of maturity and adoption of process mining in Europe and North America. Notwithstanding, over the last couple of years, financial services providers in Asia Pacific have been catching up with this trend in pursuit of unlocking efficiencies across their operations, making sure that they remain compliant and they can demonstrate conformance to how they design their operations. As a result, Asia Pacific as a region will see some of the biggest sort of growth in process mining market over the next couple of years. I think it's something that we have to note and be very aware of in this region, specifically for those that want to kind of stay in step with the development of new technologies and ways we can keep the operations efficient and effective. So in terms of the key drivers, specifically for Asia, that will sort of help accelerate adoption of process mining, there's the ever-increasing sort of appetite for digitizing operations, also movement to cloud-based solutions, which also includes Celonis, the increased adoption of artificial intelligence technology, including automation as well. And then, of course, growing expertise and ability to successfully identify use cases in banking and insurance and then deploy process mining there as well. In order to do that, I think there are certain levers that financial services providers will have to consider. One of them includes a complicated legacy IT landscape, as well as kind of the ongoing sort of need to keep investing in operational excellence in order to be able to identify the right use cases, like I said, and get the most benefit out of process mining in general. So with that, I'll hand over to Rohan to unpack the benefits of process mining and Celonis in particular in detail.
Hey, thank you, Mix. Before we get started, first of all, thank you to Capco for having me here, and thanks everybody for joining. Very quickly, let me give a quick blurb on Celonis and its background. Celonis is a process mining firm. Celonis invented process mining, so to speak, based on an academic paper, and it was set up by three friends in Germany, three classmates and friends in Germany. Like Edwin mentioned, process mining actually looks at the data that's within the system and then generates a process map based off that. Based on this technology, we have developed use cases in many different industries, and focusing on banking and financial services. When we look at this space, we actually find that we are able to help our end customers with their top line in terms of making the process more smoother and driving more revenue. We're able to help with the bottom line by cutting waste and eliminating waste in the process. And we're able to help with the green line. It's something that Celonis as a company is very passionate about, is about making sure that we do our business sustainably. And the way we do that is by making sure the processes are frictionless and by eliminating the waste in the processes. If we look at processes are really the connection between, are the connectors in our chain of economic value, right? And by streamlining these processes, we're able to deliver a lot of value to many of our customers. If we look at the two cases that we have on the screen, we're engaged with both of them for a long time. And in both of these instances, we've delivered significant amounts of value. At Deutsche Bank, we started off, we've identified over $60 million in terms of improvements in cost efficiencies. We've looked at, and we've done this in a very, very short time. The beauty of this technology is that once you get started and you have access to the systems, the actual delivery of reports of output from the system is very, very quick. We're able to do the mapping, we're able to figure out the variance, we're able to do all of that, and then identify where there's wastage in a very, very short time frame. Now, this can vary a little bit based on the systems you've got, based on the actual access to the different aspects of the business. But having said that, this is a typical time frame for demonstrating value to our customers. The other instance is with Allianz, where we've looked at the claims management process. It's an insurance customer, obviously, and where we've looked at the claims management process. We've analyzed about 5 million claims. And based on that analysis, we've identified savings of 21 million euros, and also reduced the claims life cycle. How quickly we can manage a claim and pay out a claim is improved by a third, right? This is a huge improvement, especially when you look at the number of claims and the number of processes that are happening across the chain. So in both of these instances, we can see a huge reduction in the time and effort that it takes to carry out a process. And consequently, you see a lot of economic value. In some cases, this is not just faster and better, but it also means that there are attendant benefits outside of the process we're taking into account. But that's not what we measure. What we measure is actually the direct benefit of the processes that we're impacting. So in this particular case, you can see this. You can see the improvement that we're looking at over here, and the very strong results that we've delivered in both of these cases. If I can just go to the next slide, I'll take a minute to quickly run through what process mining looks like. Nick, if you could help me with the next slide, please. Thank you. The process mining is, like Edwin mentioned, is basically pulling data in from the system. And the reason we do that is when we look at the processes, we have a process in mind. When we look at the process, we design it with what's called the happy path in mind, right? We believe that in this particular simple situation that we've taken for the order management, the process that we think of is that the order comes in, we fulfill the order, we provide an invoice, and then we pay it out, right? We get paid for it. Now, that is the simple, straightforward, happy process. The moment we start to analyze data, and obviously the more data we have, the better off we are in terms of the number of variants we can capture, the number of different options we have available, and we really begin to get an idea of how the process begins to look. And really, while we might think there are a few different variants that we have in mind, because that's what's visible to us from outside, in reality, the number of variants is huge, and it results in something that looks like the picture at the extreme right, which is called a spaghetti diagram. For obvious reasons, it looks like a bowl of spaghetti. For us, it's a gold mine, because this is really where we identify the value that is hidden in your organizations, in your processes. By streamlining these processes, by eliminating waste and redundancy, we're then able to streamline the process and generate a much better output. This is something that we can do repeatedly, because it doesn't require us to go back and check our results by interviewing people or by speaking to people. It's based on the data that's being collected in your systems as a matter of record. because your systems have this data built in, that's where it comes in. So this is sort of the really quick view in terms of what process mining is and how we can deliver benefits from it. With that, I'm going to quickly, better than me talking is to have a quick demo on this. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Jenny and Mix to take us through that.
Thanks, Rohan. That was a good introduction in terms of what are the benefits, and just to give a little bit of context. Over to you, Mix, to show us in reality, what does this actually look like?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. Thanks, Rohan. Let me just share my screen with you all. So just before I start, I want to highlight that process mining is an agnostic tool that can be deployed pretty much anywhere in a financial services institution. However, we have picked process mining in KYC, know your customer, as part of anti-financial crime, because I think it's going to be quite relevant for probably most people in the attendance. And KYC as a function can really benefit from cost efficiency, making sure that client KYC cases get processed quickly, they're timely, and there's absolutely strict adherence to a design process in terms of how the KYC case should be reviewed. So it's a perfect use case for process mining for us to look at. We will assume that there has been a discovery workshop taken place beforehand, and the risk managers, along with the process mining analysts, have kind of determined what are sort of roughly the KPIs that we want to monitor on an ongoing basis for our underlying processes. So with the risk managers hat on, I'm going to take a look at the dashboard, the executive dashboard of our KYC operations. And I can see that we're looking at generally three dimensions here. It's the timeliness, to see how quick are we about our processing. It's the cost that we have per KYC case, and quality control. Do the cases pass quality control checks? Do they not? And so forth. And right off the bat, I can see that in the last quarter, the average processing time for KYC cases is well above, our reference range where we would like to be, and that immediately identifies an area that we would like to focus on and start putting a remediation action plan in place. Just before we dive into some of the potential root causes for why our KYC operations are not as efficient as we would like them to be, let's familiarize a little bit with the process itself. So I'll take a quick look at the Variant Explorer. So I'll put on my process diagnostics hat on, and I'll just briefly walk through what this process actually looks like that we're looking at. And I'll refer back to what Rohan covered a bit earlier on. So I think this is where we really see Celonis shine with its features and really powerful diagnostics. It really requires a simple ID, a description of a step and a timestamp for Celonis to generate real-time automatically a true representation of the process or the workflow wherever Celonis is integrated. So provided we can get the data, and bare minimum at that, Celonis can generate for us a true visual process flow. So in this case, we're looking at a relatively straightforward and simple process. The KYC request is created. It's assigned to an analyst. There's an aspect of risk evaluation for the underlying client. Basic client due diligence is performed. And then, of course, we have the quality checking at the end. Now, fairly straightforward, pretty simple. And we can see that this process variant takes place 27% of the time. So that's nearly 18,000 cases within our scope and timeline. However, if I increase the scope of variance, and add in the second most common variant of the process that covers just about 19% of cases, I now see that sometimes the KYC analyst is reassigned for the particular case. In and of itself, nothing wrong with that. It's conceivable that it might happen in normal operations. So we'll keep digging further, and we'll take a look at the third most common variant. So now we see that sometimes following risk evaluation, enhanced client due diligence is necessary. So that's happening for just over 10,000 cases. Again, nothing we can do about that. Some clients just require additional due diligence, background checking, reviews, filtering and monitoring. So that's absolutely fine. However, when we get to the fourth most common variant, we now see that for just over 6,000 cases, the quality checking, the 4i checks, they fail. There's missing documentation, and that prompts requests for additional documentation. And that obviously is something we can actually mitigate and eliminate, or try to eliminate. To understand the impact this failure has on the end-to-end process, I'll take a look at the average throughput time for each step. And I can see that failing quality checks adds, on average, over 20 days to the end-to-end time of processing a single KYC case for a client. So this immediately helps us kind of pinpoint where do we want to focus our attention when we go back and try to address the inefficiencies in our operations. Just before we do that, I want to highlight a few more points here. We've looked at 4 most common variants in our process that again have been generated and sort of monitored by Celonis. However, just to Rohan's point, the true value, I think, in process mining and Celonis comes in a way that it produces for you a complete and true view of how the process actually is being executed. So if I was to add in all the variants that we have observed in this demo, you'll see that the actual flow of the KYC process is a lot more complicated, and there are a lot more potential things we could look at, investigate, tweak, and adjust in the process. And this is, again, just a demo. We're looking at 17 variants overall. In real life applications where Celonis is deployed in financial services, it's not uncommon to see for particular use cases variant count that exceeds 1,000. Now you can imagine how it's very difficult, practically impossible, to get that transparency for a process in the sort of more conventional process mapping exercises where one would sit down and in an interview format run workshops with the run-the-bank SMEs who actually execute these processes. So that being said, let's switch gears and let's focus on what could be causing the quality control challenges. So I'll take a look at the processing time analysis. At the beginning of the demo, I mentioned that we're assuming that prior to this, there have been a small series of workshops where we have worked out with the anti-financial crime unit of the bank that there will be certain metrics we would want to focus on. There's been a little bit of discovery going on. So now we have agreed that we'll, time taken to process the case is going to be one of our focus areas. Now, notwithstanding, process mining requires just 3 attributes to produce this process flow. It can consume all sorts of other metadata to help with the analysis. In this case, in this dashboard, bottom right-hand corner, we can see that we can actually slice and dice the process analytics across industry of the underlying client, the product offering. We see M&A, equity, leverage CM, the analysts, the KYC analysts who are handling these cases, and of course the tenure of the analyst. However, my focus today is going to be on the top inefficiencies right here. So Celonis is brilliant at doing a lot of the analysis and investigation automatically based on sort of built-in logic, and it identifies the different categories of inefficiencies. Right off the bat, we can see that quality control failure, so steps associated with having to redo quality control, has the highest impact on processing time. So well over 25 days that we saw previously. So I'm going to drill into that a little bit more and see what could we do to improve quality control. It doesn't take long to notice that the root cause seems to be that the KYC cases which fail quality control in our process are being handled by analysts who have been in the job for 6 months or less. For a risk manager, putting my risk manager's hat back on, that immediately helps me focus my effort on addressing the root cause of failed cases, and then that in result would have, of course, a positive knock-on effect on the timeliness of my operations, also the cost, because we'd get through cases quicker, and then it would also help me with my quality control KPIs. So I hope that's been helpful to understand and get a peripheral view on some of the functionality that Celonis does offer. I want to really stress the ease and the ease of deploying Celonis, as well as the amount of analytics that become available at your fingertips once you set it up. I'm going to hand over to Jenny now to unpack a little bit more on the different aspects of Celonis, along with Christine and Rohan.
Thanks so much. So now we'll move over to the Q&A portion. We'll cover some of the most common questions that people have around process mining. And if you have any further questions, you can pop those into the chat. And if we're able to pick those up at the end, we will. Or if more appropriate, we can always follow up on those offline. So first, what I'd like to understand, Christine, is you're the Capco US process mining practice lead. Can you please share with us why Capco picked Celonis as a partner for process mining?
Yeah, Rohan already spoke about the many benefits process mining provides. So just in general, process mining is a critical component in our solution toolkit as consultants, as it is much more efficient, more accurate, and easier to scale than traditional business process mapping. Now, speaking about Celonis, Celonis is the clear leader in the market. It allows us to fully customize the dashboards and integrate to all sorts of source system, and it's continuously advancing their capabilities. And what we see here in the North American market is that more and more of our clients actually adopt Celonis. So it was a somewhat natural decision for us to partner with them.
Okay, excellent. And Rohan, given your role at Celonis, can you share with us some of the financial services or insurance use cases for us to get a better understanding of where it's good to leverage Celonis?
Thanks, Jenny. The short answer on that is that we work across most of our enterprises. The place where most of our customers tend to start is obviously in the back office or in the processes, in the sales, in the general and administration area, so in the finance and admin area. But in terms of where can we be deployed, it sort of is across a bank or across an insurance organization or a financial services organization. Now, the 4 areas that we look at are really, if we break it up in the way that we look at it, there's a customer-facing side, which obviously we have. When we implement Celonis in this area, it helps us to improve the processes that deal with the customer, and helps us to drive more revenue for our end customers. So, for example, over here, we can look at a client onboarding process, which really is, if you can do it faster, if you can do it better, that's a critical aspect for customer satisfaction. And that definitely helps with growing your customer base. Similarly, if we look at the risk governance and compliance space, that's really an area that we have found a huge demand from financial institutions. One of the reports I looked at mentioned that we have about 3,000 regulatory changes across the globe for financial institutions, in terms of AML, in terms of KYC, in terms of basically making sure that the banking system is safe. That puts a huge strain in terms of on banks and financial services institutions in terms of how they can drive compliance. Given this, the Celonis is key because we can map out the process, figure out where there's weaknesses, where there's strengths. We're also able to figure out delegation of responsibilities, delegation of duties, and make sure that we don't have any compliance issues. This is really a big deal because I'm sure everybody who's on this call has seen the multi-million-dollar, sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars of sanctions, of penalties that are put on banks and financial institutions for in either infractions or misses in this space. And for us, it's definitely a huge value addition that we're able to stop that. We're able to reduce that significantly. If we look at the operations, from an operations perspective, every single flow, every single process that's in the bank is actually generating this data, is able to create, and we're able to go in there, look at this data, look at each of the processes, and make sure that across the life cycle of a process, across the life cycle, for example, of a loan, or across the life cycle of a customer onboarding, we're able to make sure that the process runs smoothly, not just on the front office, but also through the entire organization. Again, one of the things that we find is easy to do, especially in the BFSI space, is to look at the finance and administration space, because these records are more easily available. So as a good first proof point or a starter, this is really a sweet area where we find where we find it easier to work with or get started with many of our customers. So I hope that answers the question. I hope that provides some context in terms of where we go with it.
Absolutely. I guess with so many use cases, I'd like to ask Christine, how do we help our clients in terms of prioritizing and selecting the right use case for them?
Yeah, that is a really important question, especially early in the journey. You want to make sure that you derive substantial value, have a high return on investment, and also show successes that then will drive demand across other business areas. So you would want to prioritize use cases with a high impact on the organization and a low or reasonable effort. And impact can be assessed by strategic relevance and expected outcomes. Can the use case help fulfill the corporate and business objectives? And how big do we think is the optimization potential? For example, do we expect to generate significant cost savings or improve client experience? And with that, we'll be able to increase the revenue. Oftentimes, we also see that pain points are already somewhat known, meaning the client is aware that the process has inefficiencies. The throughput times might be longer than expected, and maybe there's a lot of rework. But it is not really clear what is driving this. In such a scenario, process mining can quickly deliver results. And then improvements in frequent processes with high process volume can lead to higher benefits. And on that note, we also want to make sure we have enough cases and transactions to generate insights on process deviations and common root causes. And from our experience, there's a couple of processes across the banking value chain that are good candidates. For example, payments, loan operations, KYC, trade settlement, they will work well. Rohan already mentioned a couple. So really we need to fulfill those criteria, and we want to create a high impact. And then in terms of effort, we are looking at how many systems are involved. Is the data structured in a way that we can easily consume it, and can we extract it in a timely fashion from the source system? And I saw a question in the chat if the log structure needs to be adjusted. And this is usually not our experience. So what we really just need is a case ID, an activity, and a timestamp. And as long as the source systems have this information, we don't need to change how the data is captured in the source systems. Going back to the prioritization, we will work with all our clients and take the specific situation into account, look at their business objectives, what they want to achieve with process mining to get to the right prioritization for them.
Sounds great. And once you manage to narrow down on a particular use case, how long does it take to get some results out of process mining?
Yeah, so Warren mentioned earlier 6 to 8 weeks as a time frame. And I would agree with this and add that we can have a very first understanding of the process flow and inefficiencies, in most cases, only 1 to 2 weeks after receiving the data. That is if we work off a flat file and not connect it to any live systems. However, this is really just the first understanding, and the completion of a more thorough analysis, including configuring the dashboards, getting to the root causes of the issues, and then also determining actions to remediate the issues, usually takes between 4 to 8, maybe 10 weeks, depending on the complexity of the process. So I would say overall, how long it takes also depends on what you're defining as success criteria. But from our experience, it's certainly quicker than a manual approach. And the other benefit is that saves you time in the long run, is once you have Celonis connected to the live data, you are capturing updates automatically.
Sounds great. So Mix gave us a flavor of what the results could look like. He showed us the happy path and kind of where the process deviates from that. And you kind of just alluded to this as well, Christine. As we start to make improvements to the process, we want to track those benefits. So Rohan, how can process mining help us automate that benefits tracking piece?
Thanks, Jenny. So like Christine mentioned, we have the option of having a live data feed, which means we can track our performance on an ongoing basis. We can show what improvements we've delivered, how the process has gotten streamlined, and equally what are the metrics looking like, because the metrics get updated in real time. But we can take a we can take a snapshot in time, and then based on that, that baseline that we've taken, that Edwin talked about right at the beginning of this webinar, we can compare where we are against that. We can make sure that the benefits that we've talked about, that the value that we're delivering matches what we've identified right up front in the baseline. I hope that helps, but this is really a straightforward, simple process because like Christine said, it's an ongoing data feed that we can pick up and we can manage on an ongoing basis.
Certainly sounds much easier than keeping on updating process maps from my experience.
It is.
Okay, so Rohan, can you also share with us kind of how these organizations can be more forward-looking using process mining? So it doesn't just give you a view of your inefficiencies, it actually helps you in solving them. Can you tell us a little bit more how Celonis enables that?
Thanks, Jenny. So really, when we look at our at Celonis as a product, Celonis has, while Celonis started in process mining, we've evolved into what we call execution management, and we can help orchestrate the processes across your organization. Now, so what this does for us is very simple. One is that we identify and we can fix the inefficiencies in your systems and processes, and Celonis can be an ongoing part of that. Celonis can actually has an AI/ML component that helps to learn what's happening in the process and picks up more and more information and delivers it. This allows us to really track, not just track, but also to drive the benefits. We have a full-fledged action engine which we call action flows internally. And using that, we can actually drive a lot of the improvements, a lot of the automation that we're looking at in processes. So coming back to the not only are we identifying the problems upfront, we can then figure out how to fix it. And once we fixed it, we can continue to measure it, continue to drive those improvements as we go along.
Sounds wonderful. So now that we've talked about the many things process mining enables us to do, I think it's important to understand how to actually do it. So Christine, what are your lessons learned from your process mining engagements?
So I would categorize the lessons learned into 3 primary buckets. The first, strategic value of the use case. Second, the team setup. And the third, technical feasibility. I'll give you a little bit more context for each. We already talked about prioritization and selecting the right use case. And especially when a client is just starting with process mining, the success of the very first project will likely impact whether an organization wants to further invest into this technology or if they lose appetite. So that is why it's really important to pick a process from which we can derive value. And another important aspect in this context is to create a shared vision across stakeholders and to have a common understanding of what success looks like. Regarding the team setup, having the right technical skills on the team is one thing. Another important point is having the right business expertise, as it still needs a human being who understands the process and the challenges to make sense of the data, draw conclusions, and make recommendations which are in line with industry best practices and also regulatory requirements. Without this business knowledge, there's a risk that you're not getting the value out of the technology. And lastly, technical feasibility. Ideally, we get the data out of an event log, which tracks activities and timestamps for unique case IDs. And especially for the starter use cases, we would recommend limiting the number of systems from which we extract the data to 1 to 2 systems. In later stages, we can then add more data sources, but recommend to really start small in the beginning to have like quick successes, as I mentioned earlier.
Okay. And if our audience is thinking, I want to get started, Rohan, what's the best setup for process mining?
Thanks, Jenny. So we've sort of alluded to it at various parts of the conversation, but what we really do with process mining is we look at the data that's already in your systems. So obviously the first thing that we have to address is making sure we have the right data and we have access to that data. So in Celonis, what we work on is called an event log. And that event log is very simple. It's just a unique identifier, which you have for every transaction in the system. It's a timestamp, and it's the name of the activity. So that information is available across every single system that we have today. And in fact, if your systems don't have it, you're probably breaching compliance laws somewhere. So, and the reason we have to have that is because for audit purposes and for audit trails, this information is always recorded, especially in the banking and financial services sector, because we want to make sure that we can track back to who's done each activity on a system and when it was carried out. So those timestamps and those audit trails are always maintained. So what we're using is that data, is the event log data, pulling that event log data into Celonis. Celonis then captures that, creates a data model, and creates the process model based on the data that we've gotten. So that's one absolute requirement is obviously the data. Christine gave a few examples, a few points about what makes sense, which factors we need to consider. But apart from that, the only other thing that we really look at is making sure that once we have the data, we're able to pull it into the system. We can then create a data model based on the expertise that Capco brings to the table, and that we're able to make sense of the process map that we've generated, and therefore able to deliver value to our end customers.
Okay. Appreciate you sharing that, Rohan. And Christine, just want to understand from you in terms of these engagements and where we partner with Celonis, what is Capco's role in these engagements?
Generally, we can take different roles, which will also depend on the maturity stage of our clients. For some, we might deliver a short value assessment, which I also will explain in a bit how that would look like. For others, we are looking to support, we are supporting them with longer-term implementation projects across multiple processes, or we might advise them on how to establish a center of excellence. And all our engagements have in common that we work in partnership with Celonis, which usually means that Capco runs the implementation from technical configuration to analyzing the process, making recommendations, and bringing in our business expertise. And Celonis, on the other hand, provides best practices for the implementation and advanced product support as needed.
Okay, and just to close off, can you share with the attendees what a typical engagement actually looks like to bring this to life for everyone?
Yeah, first, let me explain why we do a proof of value and how that benefits our clients. So we usually recommend to start with a proof of value as it is very cost efficient and low effort to make sure that the technology fulfills our clients' need and that they are able to experience the power of process mining really with their own data before making any commitment of investing into the technology. As mentioned earlier, a POV usually takes between 4 to 6, 8, or 10 weeks, which really depends on scope and on complexity. And we'll start any engagement with the goal-setting workshop to make sure that we get a good understanding of the business objectives, we confirm the process that we want to assess, and we'll also use the time to walk through the process as it is today, capture known pain points, and we'll then determine what success looks like. And for the data integration, we want to keep that as simple as possible for a POV. As I said before, the primary purpose of the POV is really to assess the value of process mining for our client. That's why we don't want to lose any time upfront with the technical setup and prefer to use flat files instead of connecting to the source systems. Later on, we can connect to actual data sources, capture live data updates, but for the POV, we really are focused on showing the value to the client. And once we have the data uploaded, we start visualizing and assessing the process, calculating the key metrics. And as I mentioned before, we can get a first view of the process in most cases about 1 to 2 weeks after receiving the data. And at this point, we are usually able to map out the actual process with process variations. We'll have an initial understanding of key metrics, unnecessary process steps, and other inefficiencies. So the emphasis here is on initial understanding, but as you see, this is a lot quicker than following a traditional business process mapping approach. And in addition, we get a data-driven instead of a subjective view. And from my experience, it's been very eye-opening for clients when they see the actual process flow with oftentimes a few thousand variations. And this is certainly something, as also Mix mentioned, you won't be able to achieve this with the manual approach. Then in the remaining time of the POV, we will finalize the configuration of the dashboards as well as our analysis of the insights, confirm the root causes for inefficiencies, and define actions to remediate the issues, which can be anything from redesigning a process, automating process steps, or integrating additional quality checks, for example. So at the end of the POV, we will showcase the solution with our findings and recommendations. And at this point, the client should have a very good understanding on how process mining can benefit their organization so that they can make an informed decision if they want to use Celonis moving forward. And if they do, we can now start to integrate Celonis into their ecosystem, establish the live data connections, and they can start using Celonis for monitoring and steering purposes. At this point, it's also really important to drive adoption and enable the business users on the platform and to identify additional use cases for process mining, which usually comes very easily once the clients have seen the potential of the platform. We also need to think about how we want to scale, which processes, governance, and skills we need for a broader rollout. So closing the loop on the question earlier, what our role in engagement looks like, those are all things that Capco can help with.
Thank you so much, Christine. And I hope that that gives people a better understanding overall in terms of process mining and how you can get started if you're interested. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. Thank you everyone for attending. I hope that there's something you can take away from this. If you've got any feedback or interest in finding out more, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much.